Let's get on with the recap. Winners, losers, top 25, bunch of energy. Welcome to the tailgate. Let's go. We got ourselves a lot of winners. Hard to narrow it down to 5, but I think we got a good one to start off as. The first big winner for me is Stanford as they took down Colorado 46-43. I watched most of this game until I fell asleep. Sorry, just too late. All that Pac-12 football, hard to stay up for. But I watched Stanford make most of their comeback. It's just very impressive for them. They were down 29-0 and they came back to win in overtime. Of course, talking about Stanford in this game, you can't talk about anyone else but Alec Ayaminor balling out 2 big touchdowns to help Stanford claw back a little bit, and then just play great throughout the rest of the second half and into overtime. He had, what was it? He had 13 catches, 294 yards and 3 touchdowns. He had that incredible catch over Travis Hunter on his helmet, on his dome. That was crazy. A hell of a comeback for Stanford, and a very good win for them to upset Colorado like that, so they're my first big winner. The next big winner for me is North Carolina as they took down Miami in a ranked matchup, 41-31. I kept my eye on most of this game. I didn't watch it though, because I was watching the LSU game. But keep my eye on it. Miami looked like they were doing really well. Their offense was playing amazing. Tyler Van Dyke was recovering. He was playing really good, especially after that battle to Georgia Tech. It looked like they were gonna win this game. But then North Carolina had that big third quarter. They scored 21 points. 2 of them from Devontae Walker, who went off in that game. And it just wasn't enough for Miami to claw back. Tyler Van Dyke started to kind of pull off. He threw some picks and turned an amazing game into just an okay game as North Carolina pulled ahead and it was just too late for Miami. For North Carolina, it was a 3-headed attack. Drake May played another really good game. He's slowly coming back to the Heisman race, but with a slow start, it's going to be really hard for him to climb back, but still a chance, of course. Moron Hampton is playing really good still, and then Devontae Walker, of course, had 3 touchdowns, 300 yards, not 300, 130 yards. Just really good game all around for North Carolina's offense, and their defense played really good in the second half to keep Miami's offense in check. So good win for them as they're one of the big winners too. The third big winner for me is Oregon State as they took down UCLA in another ranked matchup, winning 36-24. Boy, was I wrong. I thought UCLA was going to take them down on a defensive matchup, but oof, man. Oregon State has looked really good since I lost to Washington State, and it looks pretty clear to UCLA that although their defense is pretty good and the rest of the team is pretty solid, Dante Moore, being a freshman and all that, it's really holding them back. He's throwing a lot of picks. His completion percentage has not been that great. This is another example. He had 3 picks and Oregon State capitalized. DJ Ukulele played really good. He's been playing pretty solid since that bad game against Washington State, of course. And then just a good game all around. A pretty good game from Damian Martinez. Silas Bolden played pretty solid. Just a good game all around on both sides. UCLA tried to make a comeback down 19, but just couldn't happen. So great win for Oregon State, and after how they've been looking recently, they look to be in serious contention for the Pac-12 championship game. I don't know if they're going to win it, especially after what Washington just did and how they're looking, but they definitely look to be in contention to make the game. The next big winner is Notre Dame as they pummeled USC 48-20. Again, I didn't watch this game as LSU was playing at the same time, but there really was no point for me to watch it after LSU got up big because Notre Dame was beating up on USC worse than LSU was beating up on Auburn. I didn't expect this from Notre Dame, especially how they played these last 3 weeks, struggling with some of these ranked teams. I thought USC was just going to pummel them. But, oh my gosh, Notre Dame's defense, they're still amazing. And they got so much pressure on Caleb Williams. Caleb Williams had a lot of fumbles, a lot of turnovers. He had 3 picks, I don't know how many fumbles. And then, looking at the game, they didn't need a lot of yards in Notre Dame. They just kept getting a lot of turnovers, and that gave them small fields to drive on. So Sam Hartman played pretty well. Aldrich Essen was the big player for them as he had almost 100 rushing yards and 2 touchdowns on offense. And just everything. USC looked like they might have a chance to make a comeback as it was 31-20 with about 9 minutes left in the fourth quarter. but Notre Dame got that 99-yard kickoff return touchdown by Jadarian Price, and that sealed the deal. A great win from Notre Dame, an amazing bounce-back game, and a real bad loss for USC. But Notre Dame is my second biggest winner because, like I said, what a turnaround from week to week. And of course, the biggest winner is Washington as they beat Oregon in a top 10 game, 36-33. Now this was a game I definitely watched. I had to watch this game entirely, and boy, what a game it was. Washington got up early, and I thought they had it when they were up 29-18, but Oregon started to climb back. They were really starting to play good on defense, and Washington was just in a hole. But Washington capitalized on that big mistake from Oregon. That was them going for it on Washington's 47. Washington held, and Michael Penix capitalized. 2 plays, 2 dots, touchdown, and there it was. I mean, that sealed the deal. Oregon missed the field goal, and Washington won as they make an argument now for maybe the best team in the country. It's pretty crazy to look at this game, of course. The big hero is Michael Penix, as this game, I think, is right now just secured his Heisman spot. He's definitely the number 1 after this week. And there's really no argument in my opinion right now, especially with how bad Caleb Williams played and Washington being undefeated comparing to Jaden Daniels. LSU is 5-2, so it's kind of that. And of course, when you look at Washington from other sides, they had a good game from Dylan Johnson on the ground as he had 100 yards and a touchdown. And then of course the 2-headed receiving core, Rome Odunze and Jalen Polk, both played really good. They both had 100 yards and they both had a touchdown. Just an amazing game all around for Washington's offense. I was worried when Washington lost the lead and their offense just wasn't doing anything. But like I said, they capitalized when Oregon made a mistake. And that's a sign of a great team. You capitalize when you get the chance. So hell of a win for Washington as they're my biggest winner. Now it's time to get to the losers, the sad or fun part, however you look at it. The first big loser for me is Oregon, as I just brought it up. They lost to Washington 36-33. Oregon is one of the big losers because of Danny Lanning's questionable coaching calls. They went over 3 on 4th down, and they just would have settled on 2 of those, which would have been field goals, and then they just pinned Washington deep. Then Oregon most likely wins the game. It's just really questionable play calling, of course. I mean, you just take the points. I mean, I understand you're going up against maybe the best offense in the country, but your defense is playing pretty solid, and your offense is pretty good themselves, so I'll just take the points when you can get them. And of course, the big mistake was not pinning Washington deep and instead going for it on their 47th, and then Oregon slipped up, Washington got the stop, and boom, boom, touchdown, and then Oregon missed the field goal. It's just crazy. I mean, they wasted a really good performance from Bo Nix and Troy Franklin and Bucky Irving. It's just kind of sad to see, like I said, wasted performances from those 3 great players. So for that, they're one of my big losers. These next 3 losers are all about on the same level to me, as they all got blown out. So I think you can know who I'm narrowing it down to. But the first one I'm talking about is USC, as they were the only team to lose to another ranked team. But again, they got blown out by Notre Dame 48-20. Again, USC just played bad. Caleb Williams had 3 picks. He looked terrible, and they got a bunch of fumbles. Just they couldn't do anything at all. Notre Dame pummeled them. They got pressure on Caleb Williams. Again, Caleb Williams played terrible, and Notre Dame they made a play off every mistake. Not much I can really say for USC. It's a bad loss. It really hurts them. It wasn't a conference loss, so they're still number 1 in the Pac-12 in terms of conference record. But this is a really bad loss, especially as they're about to get into the thick of their schedule. And like I said, if I look real quick, it definitely doesn't help, as they have Utah this weekend, and then they got to play Washington and Oregon back to back soon. So it's just really tough for them to see how they play, especially after this bad loss to Notre Dame. So they're one of the big losers. The next big loser for me is Louisville, as they got blown out by Pitt 38-21. This one was really bad for Louisville, as they came off a huge win against Notre Dame, but then the next week they proceed to lose to a really bad Pittsburgh team. It's pretty bad looking all around. Louisville was fine in the first half. They were up 21-14. They were doing pretty fine. They had a good second quarter, but in the second half it was all Pitt. Pittsburgh was starting to score some points. Their defense was starting to pick it up and contain Louisville. And what really sealed the deal for Louisville was that 86-yard pick six by MJ Devonshire, my bad. Again, just really bad. Jack Plummer threw 52 passes and only completed 29, so it's a pretty rough passing day for them. Of course, I think that pick six is kind of the big deal. The rushing attack really wasn't there. Their best running back, Jawar Jordan, only had 2 carries. I don't know if he was injured. They just didn't give him anything. But it just looks really bad. And again, their offense was just completely contained in the second half of the game. So really bad loss for Louisville, especially after how they looked the week prior. So for that, they're one of the big losers. Of the 3 losers I was talking about that were very similar, the biggest one for me is easily Washington State, as they got blown out by Arizona State 44-6. Arizona State just played this game right. Washington State couldn't do anything. Cam Ward had 2 turnovers. He just couldn't do anything. He had less than 200 yards passing, and of course 200 total yards. He had less than that. So it's just crazy to see how Washington State, whose offense looked amazing, has just been obliterated. I mean, just not there anymore. It seems like teams are starting to get pressure on Cam Ward, and if they realize that Washington State's in for a tough rest of the season. Washington State, they couldn't contain Noah Fafita, who played really good. They definitely couldn't contain Jonah Coleman, who had 70 rushing yards and 3 touchdowns, and then 98 receiving yards. I mean, doing everything. Washington State just looks really bad, and it really sucks for them as scheduling gets harder for them, but they are my second biggest loser. And the biggest loser for me, in my opinion, is Colorado, as they blew a 29-point lead to Stanford, and they lost 46-43. I brought up the game from Stanford's side, now looking at it from Colorado's side, man, I really don't know what to say. Colorado came to this game all hyped up. They just beat Arizona, and I mean, this looked like another easy win. Stanford was considered the worst Power 5 team in the FPI, and by most metrics, they were the worst team of the Power 5. So for Colorado to come in and then go up 29-0 in the first half, and then proceed to blow that lead to a terrible Power 5 school is awful. Travis Hunter just wasn't doing anything at cornerback. He was gassed. I know he's returning from injury, but still, he was gassed, and that showed especially in overtime when Io Maynor had that insane catch on his helmet. Just kind of showed how much it really affects them. I mean, we know that Colorado's defense isn't that great, and of course, their offensive line is terrible. Shador and Travis Hunter are really just carrying that team, and it definitely didn't help. I mean, because their defense just terrible. I mean, they can only do so much until their defense just lets them down. But I will say this: when you're as good as you're supposed to be, and you're playing a team as bad as they are, blowing a 29-0 lead is unacceptable. So for that, Colorado is easily my biggest loser. And that wraps up the 5 big losers as we get on to the Heismans. Woo! Now for the Heismans, Michael Penix. I mean, what can I not say about him? I mean, he's incredible. I mean, he gets a chance to beat Oregon and just boom, dot, touchdown, easy. So far, that's the Heisman moment right there. Getting that chance to beat Oregon, and there you go, boom, touchdown. He's the Heisman at the moment, and I think after that win, it gives him a large gap for first place. And behind him, it's I'd say right now it's Jayden Daniels. After Caleb Williams had a terrible game against Notre Dame, I think Jayden Daniels has now clearly climbed up that second spot. But it's still a very large gap after how Penix just played against Oregon, and of course, just the play he had. Daniels, his only chance to really climb up there to number 1 is if LSU wins out and then they beat Bama. Usually if you beat Bama or if Bama beats LSU, usually the best player from that game will usually be in the Heisman running. So if Daniels can beat Bama again on the road, then I think he's up there with Penix again. Behind them, it's a lot of the same crew. Quinn Ewers, Jordan Travis, Bo Nix. Caleb Williams is still there, but I say he's kind of in that little middle ground now instead of being a top candidate. Drake May is climbing back up there after he's been playing really good these last 2 weeks, and North Carolina is 6-0. and Dylan Gabriel. I know I didn't bring him up last week. I kind of forgot, but that was on my bad. But he's definitely in there now, especially with how he played against Texas and just Oklahoma being as good as they are. Those are my main Heismans. And now it's time to get on to my favorite part, the top 25 comparison. They are pretty similar, but still some stuff to look at, so can't wait. Of course, the polls are different. How the polls look, you can tell which one is different based on the quality. ESPN always looks way nicer than mine, so let's get on with it. Looking at the top 10, the exact same teams are in it, just the placements are a little different. Of course, y'all know my top 4 has the most change, as I have Ohio State at 1 still, and then following them is Georgia, Florida State, and Michigan, whereas the polls have Georgia still at number 1 with Michigan at 2, and Ohio State at 3 and Florida State at 4. Same 4 teams, just a little bit different. Both me and the polls have Washington at 5. I feel like it's a good spot for them. I think you can definitely argue that they deserve that 4 spot. It's right there. It's right there. But I don't know if they're better than Michigan still, so it's still kind of a tough spot for me. At number 6, I have Penn State, whereas the polls have Oklahoma. I have Oklahoma ranked 1 spot below a 7, and it's just a slight swap. I do think Penn State is better for the time being. I know they don't have a big win yet, like Oklahoma, but hey, Penn State has a chance to get that as they're going to play Ohio State next week. Of course, I said I have Oklahoma at 7, and then at 8, I have Texas, which is the same as the polls, so about a good spot for them. Really no reason to change. They're on a bye week. And then at 9 and 10, I have Oregon and USC swapped. I have Oregon at 10 and USC at 9. The big reason for that was just, it is very close for me right there too. It's just that Oregon lost and USC beat a team that wasn't in the rankings. They weren't in my rankings, but they were kind of outside the rankings. So I felt like it was just right to put North Carolina slightly over Oregon. Again, just very minor changes in my polls, but the top 10 is the exact same. 11 through 15 is the most similar, as I have Alabama at 11, Oregon State at 12, and then I have Notre Dame at 15. I don't think those are really good spots for them. Oregon State's been looking amazing. Better than Bama, still a question, of course. And Notre Dame in the top 15 I think is a good spot, as they do have those 2 losses to hold them back, but it's a really impressive win, so I think they deserve the jump. The only difference is that I have Ole Miss and Utah swapped. Ole Miss is at 14, Utah's at 13. I just think Utah's a better team. That's all I can really say. Nothing much about, not much of a difference, but again, I just think Utah is slightly better, so that's why I have them at 13. 16 through 20 has all the same teams, but they're all ranked in completely different spots. Woo! True randomness, isn't that fun? At 16, I have Tennessee compared to the polls at 17. Tennessee looked really good against A&M, and I do think they're better than Duke. You'll see that I have Duke really low. I have Duke right there at 20. Now it's because I did drop them a good bit last week in the polls because they were on a bye, just with so many teams winning and losing, so much stuff happening last week. I kind of thought it was just right to drop Duke, so it might be a little bit of a D-bag move, but I know, just kind of stay with me here. I have USC and LSU at 17 and 18. 1 spot lower than the polls have both of them. Actually, 1 spot higher than the polls have both of them, my bad. That's mainly just because of me having Duke ranked lower, of course. I do think USC is still slightly better than LSU. And of course, since LSU has 2 losses, it makes it pretty easy to look at. I know USC had a bad loss to Notre Dame, but LSU's 2 losses are again pretty bad, so USC gets a slight edge for me. And then at 19, I have Missouri compared to 20 in the polls. Again, not a huge gap, but Missouri had a really nice win against Kentucky, and I actually kept them in my rankings compared to the polls knocking them out, so I thought keeping them there was a good spot. My polls don't change too much from last week because not many teams really lost, and the teams that did lose were at the bottom, so that was really easy to kind of look at. Wrapping up with 21 through 25, again, most of the same teams, just one team is different. And of course, the rankings are a little different. I have Iowa at 21 instead of Louisville there. I have Louisville 1 spot lower at 22 because, again, it was a bad loss, and I just kind of dropped Louisville a little lower. That was a really bad loss to Pittsburgh. but I have Iowa at 21, and that was mainly because I had Iowa and Wisconsin right outside my rankings. So with that, and Iowa just winning so convincingly, 15-6, I thought it was nice. I thought it was fair to just jump them up more than the polls gave them credit for. So I had them at 21. Of course, like I said, I had Louisville at 22, just one spot lower than the actual polls. And then with that, I have Air Force at 23 compared to 22 in the polls. That was mainly just because the reason I have Air Force lower is because of Iowa being higher in my polls, of course. Air Force had a really nice win against Wyoming, who I had ranked, and Air Force is 6-0, and they look really good, so it's only right to have them in my rankings. At 24, I have Tulane compared to 23 in the polls. Again, same thing with Iowa. I have Iowa ranked higher, so it's just kind of that natural lower situation. Tulane had a really nice win against Memphis. I watched the whole game. Their defense looked really good in the second half, and their offense looks pretty solid all around. So good win for Tulane. They're 5-1. Their schedule is really easy from this point on, so it definitely looks like they should win out. But we'll see, as they are 5-1 and they look good. And to round out my polls, the only difference is that I have Florida ranked at 25 instead of UCLA. The difficult thing for me was that UCLA had a bad loss to Oregon State, and I had UCLA ranked lower than the polls did, and also I just didn't know how it felt to keep a 4-2 team in there. I know their 2 losses are to ranked teams, and Florida definitely has worse losses on their schedule, but not by too much. I know the loss to Kentucky was really bad, and of course losing to Utah was fair. I mean, they were on the road, and Florida's looked pretty good since their loss to Kentucky, so I think it's just kind of, I thought they were slightly better, so I had them at 25 instead of UCLA. But UCLA is right outside my polls. I would have them at 26 if there was a 26. But if you want to take a look at the polls more, feel free to pause. But that wraps up the polls and the recap. So I hope y'all enjoyed the recap. Hope y'all enjoyed the video entirely, unless I was talking about your team and they lost or whatever, but that's unfortunate. College football is always so random. The best teams lose and the worst teams win. That's a good way to describe it, I'd say. But yeah, hope you enjoyed the video. Like, favorite, subscribe if you had, and I'll be back Wednesday for some predictions. Got a pretty good week of college football, so I'm ready to do a prediction video.